commission to order. Roll call.
Song.
Here.
Montgomery.
Here.
Sally.
Here.
McKinney.
Here.
Bernard.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Smith.
Here. If you will, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the nation for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. You've all been sent copies of the minutes for the meeting on January the 10th, 2023. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 10th meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. First item on tonight's agenda is a special use permit, SU 22-13, Mr. Rhoads.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ben Rhoads, Senior Planner. Before you is a special use permit that is occurring at 411 North Broadway Street. This is right across from the city's community development offices. What the request is for a short-term rental. And here we see the letter that was provided by the applicant. Just to summarize some of this, they're saying there's no more than 6 guests, will not have any parties, and there will be a parking available on the street. And here is the site of the property. This is actually looking to the east. We normally have those going north, just so you can see the front of the property there. Staff is recommending approval, and we're available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address this issue? Hearing none, commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on this special use permit?
I guess. Go ahead. Ben, did you say the only parking will be on the street for this one?
Yeah, that would be correct. There's not a lot of parking available on the property itself. There's an alley on the right side, if you see there, and then street parking. But it's been like that for many, many years for the residents there. Yeah.
My only comment is the applicant makes, they literally say in their letter that they're going to part-time use it as a second residence. And we say in our project intent that it is to be used solely for short-term rent. Is that any kind of discrepancy that we should be worried about?
So, I don't live here.
Excuse me, ma'am.
I'm Christa.
I need you to state your name and
Okay.
address. And normally we do this before we question, but in this case, go ahead. Name and your address, please.
Oh, well, I'm Christa Burton, and my address is 9965 Admiral and Rogers, but I am the owner of 411 Broadway. We do have a section that will be parking. It'll have 2 spaces off to the side. We just have to make sure there's no plumbing or gas lines underneath it that we would need to relocate. As far as the second home, we don't live here. We live in Rogers. So we come up and enjoy the downtown about once a month for a couple of days. It's not really considered a second residence. It's just, we're there a lot. So that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Commissioners, do you have any other questions on this item? Okay, hearing no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion on special use permit SU 22-13.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve SU 2213 special use development permit.
I have a motion to approve special use development permit SU 22-13. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve 22-13. Roll call, please.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Song.
Yes.
Motion is approved, and this will go to the Board of Directors on March the 7th, 2023. Next item on tonight's agenda is special use permit SU 23-01. Mr. Rhoads.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chairman and Commission. So before you is a second special use permit for a short-term rental and a single-family residence. This is at 315 West Harvard Street. So this is the the northeast corner of Harvard and Maple, if you know where that is. So here is the letter that was provided. That was actually just a snippet of the letter that was a little bit longer, but this is just what I fit for the slide here. But just in summary, they have quiet hours, no parties. There will be plenty of parking available on the site, and they specifically say no on-street parking. As you can see, here's the property. This one is now looking to the north, like we typically show. And then this is the parking area for the unit on the side there. So with that, staff is recommending approval, and we're available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rhoads. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address this short-term permit? Okay, with that being said, Commissioners, do you have any questions on this special use permit or concerns?
Ben, just looking at that picture, it looks like an alleyway goes all the way through there. Is that actually an alleyway where that drive goes in?
I don't believe it's a functioning alleyway. I honestly haven't researched it very extensively, but the parking would be essentially on the gravel lot that comes in on the side there, next to the garage and the house there. So.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve special use permit 23-01.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve special unit permit SU 23-01.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve special use permit SU 23-01. Roll call, please.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery.
Yes.
Motion is approved. This will go to the Board of Directors on March the 7th, 2023. Next item on tonight's agenda is a rezoning development permit RZ 22-11. Mr. Rhoads, you're up again.
Yes, you get me again. So what you're looking at here is a rezone. It's a little bit of an unusual rezone, and I'll explain that, but it is at the 21,000 block of South Arkansas Highway 16 for Soft 16 investments. And they're requesting to rezone a 1.8 acre strip of land from I-1 industrial to PD. And here is a survey that was provided with the application. And in particular, the area that we're looking at to rezone is what's highlighted there in the red. And so what's happened here is there was a lot line adjustment survey that was filed that shifted the property line for lot 1, which is the northern lot there, to the south. And then when that happened, that enlarged the lot, but the zoning did not carry with the lot line change. As you know, you have to do a rezone application to change zoning. So essentially that is what's happening here. We're just requesting that the same zone, PD zone, encompass the entire lot rather than just a portion of the former lot area. So the future land use map, which we display anytime we're doing a rezoning, as you can see, the map does indicate that as industrial. When the main lot was annexed in the city last year, the old future land map was in force, and that had suggested residential for the property. And so at that time, it came in as PD, planned development. And so at this point, because the majority of the lot is already PD and we want to have the lot have the same zone, we're just requesting that there would be an exception made in this instance, because of the circumstances of the lot line adjustment, that we would allow PD on that property. And then here you see the property. This is facing to the north. In the background, you see the developing Foxtail subdivision. And I also wanted to point out that the annexation ordinance came in with a density cap as part of the customized requirements of the PD zone. As you know, PD is planned development. You get to customize your development standards when those come in. So that was capped at 132 units for the whole lot. Since the lot was enlarged in size with the recent lot line adjustment, we want to ensure that the PD zone strip does not automatically increase the previous 132 dwelling unit cap. So we have requested that in the adopting ordinance to state that no additional dwelling units would be allowed on that 1.8 acre strip, which preserves the original housing density cap for the entire lot. We're wanting that due to the increased growth in this area, and staff has suggested that there be a density cap not to overwhelm traffic impacts. And finally, it should be noted that staff has added a suggested condition that this rezone be approved prior to building permit issuance on the subject property, and Megan will be covering that in her presentation next up on the agenda. So staff is recommending approval of the rezoning, and we're available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address this rezone development permit? Commissioners, do you have comments and questions of Ben? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve rezoning development permit RZ 22-11.
Make a motion to approve RZ 22-11.
I have a motion to approve RZ 22-11. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
McKinney,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally.
Yes.
Motion is approved. The rezone development permit RZ 22-11 will go to the Board of Directors on March the 7th, 2023. Next item on the agenda is significant development permit SD 23-02. Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Megan Thomas, Planner 1. To begin with this one, I would like to state that there were a few minor errors made on the staff report. The first error is related to the legal notice section, information provided on page 1 of the staff report. It appears that the legal notice was cut off when staff exported the files to PDF, so the legal notice dates are as follows. The public notice time was posted on January 15th, 2023. The newspaper public notice ran on January 15th, 22nd, and 29th in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. And the neighbor notifications letters were mailed out on January 17th, 2023. The second error is related to the conditions section on the final page of the staff report. The fourth condition regarding the need to rezone the southern 1.8 acres of land was mistakenly not included on this final page of the staff report. Please see page 1 of the staff report to view the complete list of recommended conditions of approval. I apologize for these oversights. This is a significant development permit request to construct a 126 multifamily development, 126 unit multifamily development with 5 associated storage buildings on 14.09 acres located at the 21,000 block of South Highway 16. This project was previously presented to the Commission for approval with a recommendation of approval at the November 8, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. However, the applicant has since withdrawn the previous proposal and is now coming back with a revised site plan. Move that down a little bit. This new proposal is for 3-story multifamily buildings and decreases the total number of units proposed from 132 units to 126 units. Additionally, this new proposal includes 1 additional storage building for tenant use only. This project is associated with the rezoning request that was just previously presented by Ben. On the screen is the site plan for the proposed multifamily development. The frontage is considered along Highway 16. However, the development will be utilizing 2 proposed drives off of Keck Road. Additionally, they are proposing to construct a sidewalk along both Keck Road and Highway 16. The sidewalk will tie into the development both here and here. They're also proposing crosswalks across both proposed drives. There are 3 proposed dumpster locations located throughout the site, and all dumpsters will be screened. Those are shown here, here, and here. As a condition of approval, shown here in the northwest corner of the site is the proposed detention area. As a condition of approval, the applicant will be required to file drainage and utility easements via separate instrument. Additionally, this proposal includes private amenities such as a dog park and playground area, which are shown here to the south, as well as storage units for tenant use only, which are shown here to the west. This is the landscape plan for the proposed development. They will have a 10-foot landscape buffer along all sides of the site, as well as interior parking lot landscaping. And these are the elevations for the development. You can see that they are 3-story. And this is the overall site view of the property. You can see Foxtel subdivision is currently being developed to the north. Staff is recommending approval of this request with 4 needed conditions. The first 2 conditions are related to off-site utility and drainage easements. These will need to be filed via separate instrument per the city engineer. The third condition is related to acquiring an updated developer agreement for electrical transformers. This will be needed prior to building permit issuance. The fourth condition is related to the need to rezone the southern 1.8 acres as gained on the property through a separate lot line adjustment to PD prior to development of the property to have the same zone for the entirety of the property. Staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Do we have anyone from the audience that would like to address this significant development? Commissioners, do you have questions or concerns on this significant development?
Mr. Chairman, this is probably for Kevin. I know we talked about this last time. As far as the traffic numbers, I know Highway 16 is built for it, and I know the concern is mostly 412 and 16. But what was the latest, or when was the latest traffic study that included 16 in Kenwood? That spot right there with all the development out on Kenwood, Foxtail there. I drive there almost every day, and it's getting worse and worse to get out on 16, and this just doesn't seem like it would help the situation.
So Kevin Moore, city engineer. To speak to that a little bit, I don't have a study of that intersection. What I do have are State Highway Department traffic counts, the last of which was, I believe, 2021, and that was 4,900 vehicles per day, north and south on 16, and then 3,800 vehicles per day east to west on Kenwood.
Years ago.
Okay, my other question is the road that they're doing half of or part of to pull out there, Keck Road, or going to be whatever it is, Waukesha, whichever one. I know there's a huge drainage ditch behind the houses there. Will that be under the road eventually? Is that where the road will sit?
So the road sits on the south side of that drainage ditch. The road that they're proposing will be south of that drainage
Right,
ditch.
but once it's finished with our side of it, all that will be on the south side?
The development that's being proposed has their detention pond south of the road, and then it'll cross the road to that major ditch. That ditch will stay on the north side of the road.
Okay, even when our part's done, there's room for the entire road on the south side?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a quick question, follow-up question for Kevin. The traffic count numbers you gave for Kenwood and 16, can you tell us how those compare to the design capacity for those two roads?
Yes. So the design capacity for Highway 16, as a collector street and above, we designate that as 9,000 vehicles per day. For Kenwood as well, 9,000 vehicles per day. So we're still below that threshold.
And do you have a estimate for how much those numbers are predicted to increase due to this development?
This development will add 922 vehicles per day, an estimated amount. So that would bring us to 5,800 more or less, split multiple directions because of those intersections and the light, like you mentioned, at 412.
Thank you. I just wanted to get that on the record.
Thank you, Jay. Do we have any other questions from the commissioners?
Kevin, what drives the frequency of those reviews? Is it just timeline, or do we have to request that? I mean, I feel like traffic counts changed quite a bit since 21.
Right. So the state reviews about every year. They review traffic counts in the area. You'll see the little boxes on the signs with the rubber tubes across the road, and that's what that is. And so they put those together usually on a yearly basis and then publish those, make those available. And then intersection studies are usually at the request of the city.
Us in a pretty reactive position on stuff like that, it feels like. There's nothing we can do about it, I guess, is what I'm saying, at this time, basically. They have to come before we can get the count we need to do more infrastructure.
Correct, yes. So and to speak to that, the state, as far as they're concerned with like stoplights and things like that, widenings, they want to see that traffic there ahead of time before they will justify that. And they really don't make any exceptions to that.
So Kevin, in 2021, we were in the middle of the pandemic, so traffic counts would have been extraordinarily low. Are you adding the anticipated to that count in 2021, or when you talk about the anticipated increase?
Right, so the anticipated increase is based off of studies that are done nationwide.
Okay.
And then that's why I believe we don't have updated numbers since 2020 is because of those fluctuations from the pandemic.
Kevin, can we anticipate another traffic count in 2023 since we didn't get one in 2022?
I believe so, yes. And staff always has the ability to do our own as well, if that's something that we feel is needed.
Okay, I'd be interested to know what the traffic count is now, actual count. Commissioner, do you have any other questions?
One more thing, sorry.
Go ahead.
The Keck Road, did we have any update on that? Have we heard any more, or if we're planning on moving that up on the schedule? Is it on any kind of schedule yet?
So it is, that extension is on our 5-year plan. It's listed under proposed improvements that would be under a bond if we were to go that route, and so that would be at the Board of Directors' pleasure to add that to a future budget.
there any other questions or concerns by the commissioners? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve SD 23-02, significant development permit, subject to the conditions listed.
I have a motion to approve SD 23-02, subject to the conditions listed by staff. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Renard,
Yes.
Williams,
No.
Smith,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
I'm a yes. I do have concern about the traffic, but again, there's nothing we can do about that at this time.
The motion is approved. This will go to the Board of Directors on March the 7th, 2023. Next item is significant development permit, SD 23-01. Mr. Rhoads, it's your turn.
Indeed it is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission. Ben Rhoads, Senior Planner. So what you're looking at here for your next development is an 8,400 square foot expansion to PipeLife JetStream's plant at their southern building in 1750 South Lincoln Street. They are also proposing to add a few new silos to support their expansion. Here is the site plan. You can see the two key areas circled there, and I will zoom in on that a little bit closer so you can see it. This is the expansion area. Essentially, it's a notch in their building that they had used for as a loading dock for truck deliveries back when they did most of their operation through trucking. I think this was actually web wheel at one point, the building. But any case, now they're using rail link primarily for their raw materials, so they want to fill this area in for an expansion, and then also adding additional silos, as you see shown in the top image there, to support that work. Finally, because of the expansion, they are needing to add additional parking because of that's driven by the size of the building, the number of parking required. So they are actually expanding their parking lot kind of further into their site. This is Lincoln Street on the right, so their parking lot. There's a gated area, and then on the left there, they'll have the parking. So this is the basically the elevation view, pretty basic, just the metal building that will fit into their existing building. I think you can kind of see it clearer here. This is the notched in area I was talking about. This will be filled in. They're adding the silos there, and then the additional parking will be basically in this area. It's already paved. It just needs to be designated as parking. Here's just a close-up of the area for the main expansion, and then also the area for the silos. So staff has been informed by the applicant that the expansion will not generate more noise or other impacts already emitted by the factory. And as I said earlier, most deliveries for raw materials are coming via the rail link. And after staff review, staff is recommending approval with no needed conditions. This project has also been requested to be reviewed at next week's board meeting. That's February the 21st. And we are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this significant development? Commissioners, do you have concerns, comments? You guys are too easy. That being said, I'll entertain a motion for significant development, SD 23-01.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve SD 2301 significant development permit.
I have a motion to approve SD 23-01. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve SD 2301. Roll call, please.
Williams,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Bernard.
Yes.
Motion is approved. This will go to the Board of Directors on February the 21st, 2023. Next item on our agenda is preliminary plat development PP 23-01. I'll entertain a motion to table PP 2301 based on the recommendations of staff.
So moved.
I have a motion to table PP 23-01 until the March 14, 2023 meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to table PP 23-01. Roll call, please.
Smith,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Motion is approved. We will address this issue on our March the 14th, 2023 meeting. Next item on the agenda is a final plat development permit, FPC 23-01. Miss Megan, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a final plat correction for the Siloam Warehouse subdivision located at 650 West Highway 412, just where the second Jiffy Trip is currently under construction. The request is to revise the final plat in order to amend plat note number 4 to allow for write-in and write-out access for lot 1 of the subdivision. This is the final plat. Again, the only change to be made on this final plat is to plat note number 4. No other changes are proposed. This is the previous language for plat note number 4, and below it is the revised language. This change is requested by the applicant because the applicant would like to allow for additional direct access onto Highway 412 for lot 1. And this is the overall site view. You can see lot 1 is to the west of the site, and Jiffy Trip is over there to the east. And this is the overall site view of lot 1, so you can have an idea of which lot we're talking about. So it's this area where they're wanting to have the right-in, right-out access. They'll have a drive on there. Staff is recommending approval of this request with one needed condition. The applicant shall file the plat with Benton County Circuit Clerk's Office and provide one filed copy to the city within 45 days of the board acceptance of this plat. As a reminder, this project is fast-tracked to the next week's February 21st Board of Directors meeting, as indicated on the agenda. Staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this final plat development? Commissioners, do you have questions or concerns about this final plat development permit? Hearing no questions or concerns, I'll entertain a motion.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve FPC 2301, subject to staff conditions.
I have a motion to approve FPC 2301, subject to staff recommended conditions. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve FPC 2301. Roll call, please.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Motion is approved. This will go to the Board of Directors on February the 21st, 2023. Next item on our agenda is City Code Amendments. Mr. Rhoads, your turn.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chairman and Commission. So we're shifting gears now into some staff recommended code amendments. As you know, when I shifted mainly from current planning to long range planning, this is when one of my duties is to look over our codes and maybe make some suggestions of some code changes. So as everyone is aware, the city has experienced substantial growth in the last 5 years, and this appears to remain on the same trajectory into the future. Along with the city's growth, there's been a consistent request to construct self-storage facilities, which have been in high demand as more people move into the area. Staff has received 6 new permits for these facilities within the last 5 years, of which 4 are constructed. 1 is planned for your review next month. And so when we're looking at the average square footage for a town the size of Siloam Springs compared to the number of square footage of permitted self-storage space, we're roughly around 280% of the storage available. So we're having more than doubling what a town our size would normally have. Now, as of now, these facilities are lumped into the general commercial services, which would be a use by right in the C2 zone. Properties where staff has observed that these facilities are developed have mostly occurred in the C2 zone, including the one that was approved but never constructed. As more commercial land is consumed, we have observed that potential commercial properties may be in peril of being developed for personalized warehousing rather than office or retail uses, which have a significant economic generators for the city. So staff's suggestion is not to prevent these facilities from being developed in C2, but rather to make an amendment to the definition of use unit 20 to include these uses falling into the land use more appropriate for the impact of a warehouse rather than traditional consumer-based services such as a car wash or a bank or something similar to that. By adding self-storage into use unit 20, it will be primary to be allowed in the industrial zones. However, the use unit is also permitted as a special use in the C2 zone. So what this will mean is future applicants that will need to also apply for a special use permit in addition to the significant development permit if their property happens to be in the C2 zone. This will afford an extra level of review on the proposal to see if it's in line with neighborhood context and if it is the best fit with the property in question. If they are wanting to go someplace, we would look at that more closely under the special use permit. There are some commercial areas that are not attractive to brick and mortar stores, which these kinds of uses would be a good fit, such as current example would be facilities that are located behind the existing stores on Highway 412 and that open area that is sort of blocked off from the highway. As far as the change you see, I'm showing on the slide here for use unit 21, that has nothing to do with self-storage. What that is a Scrivener's error in the code that we're just trying to correct. Not making reference to use unit 19, which had something to do with antenna towers, has nothing to do with use general industry. So that's just a correction. The main thing that you really want to focus on is that little text at the top there. You're voting to approve that being added into the code. And so with that, staff is recommending approval of the code change as presented, and we're available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to address this code change? Okay, Commissioners, your turn. Everybody happy? I'll entertain a motion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think I would recommend a motion to approve Chapter 102 Zoning Code Mini Storage.
I have a motion to approve Chapter 102 zoning of mini storages. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion to approve and a second. Roll call, please.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. The motion to approve Chapter 102 zoning code concerning mini storage is approved, and it will go to the Board of Directors on March the 7th, 2023. Next item on the agenda is zoning codes for short-term rentals. Mr. Rhoads.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chairman and Commission. So continuing on with another requested zoning code change, we're taking on short-term rentals, or STRs for short. So this ordinance is needed due to there being no formal regulations for these in the city code, specifically the short-term rentals. To date, you have reviewed 27 special use permits for STRs over the past few years in residential zones. And as you know from the staff reports that are provided with these, there's limited criteria in which to address STRs. However, if left unchecked, there could be eventual problems such as depleted housing stock and loss of neighborhood identity and community. Meaning that if STRs are in close proximity, there is a potential for eroding a neighborhood community due to occupants being pretty much out-of-town guests within the neighborhood. As you may be aware, the city is also undergoing a massive housing boom, as up to 500,000 people are projected to move to Northwest Arkansas in the next 20 to 30 years. So losing housing is a concern of the city as STRs continue to expand, removing housing and housing lots out of the mix. Staff looked at several model ordinances, particularly the City of Bella Vista, to devise regulations that we are offering for your consideration. Firstly, we defined what a short-term rental is as housing units that are leased out for at least 30 days. This way, traditional rental properties and long-term leases are not inadvertently caught up in these regulations. We also defined what a hotel motel is. So these are not. These two are not thought to be considered STRs. The key distinction is a hotel or motel is a commercially constructed structure, which would eliminate residential housing units. We also defined a bed and breakfast within use unit 10.1 as not being an STR. Bed and breakfast will continue to be regulated under 10.1 as a special use, as we're doing today with STRs. Bed and breakfasts, while not a hotel or motel per se, are slightly different, as typically these are multiple rooms rented within a house with a central area where the different guests would congregate and interact, such as for a breakfast in the housing unit. The key point being that the whole dwelling unit is not leased out to the guests. Bed and breakfasts can occur by right in the commercial zones and the PD zone, given their similarity to hotels and motels. By contrast, we are adding use unit 10.2 specifically for whole house short-term rentals as defined in the suggested code. The proposed use unit 10.2 will be special use in the residential zones, including ones that were not previously allowed in 10.1, such as in the A1 and AMH zones. 10.2 is only allowed by right in the C1 zone, and this would be consistent with the lofts and the that use short-term rentals in our downtown, which are currently approved by right in use unit 10.1, which is allowed in the C1 zone. And by the way, C1 is primarily in the downtown, so that kind of works out. One of the key areas that we have included is a cap on STRs based off of 1% of the city's verified housing stock from the U.S. Census Bureau. In 2020, this caps at 64 permits. We are capping both special use permits and business licenses, whichever gets to 64 first. We currently have more special use permits than we have business licenses at this time. We have provided a process for previously approved STRs by special use permits and or business licenses to be canceled by the applicant if they're no longer required. This way, once the 64 permit cap is met, there is a possibility that old permits that are no longer in use could be canceled, opening new spots for additional permits. Currently, the city is at 42.2% of the total allowed capacity. So this will not happen right away, but it will eventually if the city continues to see new permits for short-term rentals. Currently, there are fewer business licenses, but these are coming online as the STRs are open for business. The city is at 0.44% of the housing stock. The number is slightly higher than the permits due to how many units are absorbed through a single special use request, i.e. if one of the permits was taking up multiple housing units. So for ease of administration, staff is suggesting that we are capping the number of permits issued rather than just looking at a percentage of the housing stock. If a permit is granted but not used within a year, there's a mechanism to automatically expire the permit. We would use sales tax receipts as a way of proof of use. This will open spots for, on the permit cap so that we are ensuring that all 64 permits are active at one time. Furthermore, if any reason the city administrator finds a permit is in violation of the rules, that permit can be revoked. In the application, we're asking that the applicant provide some additional specific information. This includes a letter similar to what they're doing today with details of the property, guest rules, maintenance, the manner of solid waste removal, etc. We also want to proof of liability insurance and evidence that there is adequate parking. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, if there is a high concentration of rentals in one place, that is also grounds to turn a request down. This will be determined on a case-by-case basis. We are also proposing to limit the total allowed applications to be no more than 2 per person or entity. This would prevent corporations from buying up available properties en masse and then converting those into short-term rentals. Finally, in closing, we have added some special conditions. Some of these I'll highlight and included, which are also shown on the slide. Having a valid business license, remittance of the hotel motel tax, limiting only to overnight accommodations, so these can't be event centers or venues for weddings, things of that nature, and only limiting occupancy to no more than 3 guests per bedroom. So I also wanted to show you a map. So when we were putting this together, I thought it might be interesting for everyone to see exactly how many there are already. And again, this is under half of the cap. So, imagine this could be doubled under the proposed regulations. But anything where you see a green dot is ones that are approved permits that are in activation. And then the yellows are ones pending right now for approval. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the proposed code change as presented, and we are available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address this code change for short-term rentals? Commissioners, you have questions or concerns?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Ben. Ben, can you explain the difference between the permit and business license?
Certainly, yeah. So special use permit is a zoning exercise. So when you are in the zone district, let's say the R2 zone district, you have your use units, which hopefully you all are familiar with what those are. So some of those use units are allowed by right, and some of them are only allowed under special use. So the special use permits, given that these are mostly happening in residential areas, would be required for a short-term rental. Now, if it's in the downtown, you don't need a special use permit because that's a use by right. The business license, on the other hand, is required for any short-term rental, regardless of where it is in the city. If you're operating a business, you have to have a business license.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Ben, I do have one question about the grandfathered concept here in the last paragraph. There is one short-term rental that I know of on Jefferson Street that is also rented out by the day or by the half day, and that's all grandfathered in. How would we even monitor or know if they're renting for less I only know that because I had someone ask about renting it. But how would we even know how to monitor it? I think it's great to have the code, and I like it, but I don't know how we can enforce. You know, it's just almost.
Yeah, well, one thing I would say is that we're going to be looking at sales tax receipts as a way to verify that this
Okay.
is in operation.
That's
As
good.
far as the duration, that is going to really have to be on a case-by-case basis. If there are complaints from neighbors, we would then investigate,
Sure.
send code enforcement over, maybe send a letter or two, wondering what's going on. I think that's the case with a lot of the regulations. You know, there's going to be rules in here that are going to be very hard for staff to just come in and knock on the middle of the night and make sure that there's no party or things like that. So it really is going to be a complaint-driven scenario where, you know, if we're getting consistent complaints about a particular property, we now have the tools to be able to enforce the regulations.
I think it's excellent, and I think the strategies that you use to decide what percent could be Airbnb and all will put us in a better position to not have what's been happening in cities around us where it's become bigger issues. So we're ahead of the game, so that's great.
I have one more question. So when you say 42% now, does that include pending properties?
It was every application we received so far, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Ben, will that number change? Like you say, 64 now, but as more homes are built, I mean, we have lots and lots on the list of lots. Will that number change? Will it stay at the?
It will stay the same until 2030. And then when there's the next census, then it will get a new 1%, and then that number will automatically bump up at that time.
Okay, so it'll only change every 10
Every
years.
10 years, yeah. We're using the census as the verification tool of the number of units we have, so.
Good questions. Anyone else got questions or concerns?
Talk about the monitoring process. I mean, is that just greater than 0, or should there be a minimum? I mean, a frequency requirement? I mean, is that how does the city feel? I mean, if you've paid 50 cents in tax, you're good to keep this thing going?
So your question was about monitoring the number of units that are allowed,
Yeah,
or
it talked about, you know, there needed to be some sales tax receipts paid. I just wondered if there should be a threshold put on that, you know, if they use it 1 month a year as a short-term rental.
like if there's like a minimum amount of time to use it. We didn't get into that level of detail. We just didn't. I mean, if it's not used for a year, it will expire. So, I mean, they have to use it.
Yeah. Maybe just once, but they have to use it. Yeah. And my only other concern was if we start drawing lines based on previously approved concentrations, are we setting ourselves up for maybe any sort of redlining scenario or something where we are discriminating based upon prior treatment of others?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's why I said it really needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Where we're concerned is if we have a neighborhood street where maybe there's 3 or 4 of them together in a row, you're going to start losing some of that neighborhood identity that, you know, people are not going to knock next door to borrow a cup of milk or say hi to their neighbor. There are no neighbors. It's hotel guests coming through a revolving door. And I think that's where we're concerned that if you have too many of them together in a residential setting, is it really a residential neighborhood anymore, you know?
Yeah, I like the spirit of what we're doing. I just want to make sure legally it jives with how it needs to read. And
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to add to that, yeah, I mean, that is a concern, but one of the legitimate purposes of zoning is to, you know, guard against these kind of concentrations that kind of get out of step with, you know, the neighborhood character or needs. And so, you know, legally it's permitted. It's just one of those things that it'll have to be monitored, you know, carefully, and we'll have to look at those on a case-by-case basis if we see such a situation developing. But it's not inherently illegal in any way.
Last question. Sorry. In your data gathering, Ben, is it pretty typical for census to be used as a metric for measuring developed available property? I mean, is 10 years a normal frequency of reassessment?
Well, the decennial census is the gold standard. I mean, that's what you
Yeah,
would
okay.
use. That gives you the population and then the number of housing units. They do have American Community Survey that I think that does happen in off years, but I would have to look into that further. I mean, right now we're just considering this the main census report that comes out every 10 years is the standard to follow them.
But that was in your findings, that was kind of the standard that others had used based upon how we had crafted this.
I can't speak to whether others have used it. It's just typically that's what you would use because it is a government assessment of the housing units. You know, it's not just something done willy-nilly, like, you know, where one planner might say we have one number and then someone comes out later and says, no, we have something else. You know, it would be a little bit less substantiated. So when you have a published verified number like that, that's pretty solid to go off of. Yep.
Yeah, I know, I'm sure it's good data, it just seems like a long time, 10 years between.
Well, and one more thought in this is that at any time, a person who has a short-term rental may find that their supply and demand has dropped off. So that would level it there, and they can rent a short-term rental for 30 days or more without changing anything. There just won't be any sales tax collected, correct? So we might see that had happened in a property really easily, that this property over here was a short-term rental and then all of a sudden with no sales tax because somebody's living in it for several years. So I think that'll balance it out, because when they don't get filled up, it won't be worth it to have them. They'll rent them out for longer.
Mr. Sally, you've waited patiently.
So Ben, just to make sure I understand here, so the 10.2 short-term rentals are what we are regulating, right? Not the 10.1 bed and breakfast. Is that correct? Or
The
am I-
proposal is 10.2, so
Okay.
we're not regulating. 10.2 doesn't exist.
Okay.
The proposed ordinance would create a new use unit, brand new, that would specifically just be for whole house short-term rentals. So we're not catching up bed and breakfasts, which are kind of a different model, honestly, because that's, you know, multiple rooms rented within a house. So
if we have a homeowner who uses one bedroom and they have 4 extra bedrooms, we're not regulating those people right now. There can be as many of those as people.
as long as it's over 30 days. If it's under 30 days, then it's a short-term rental. Yes, that's my understanding, yeah.
Like taking in boarders.
Any other comments or questions or concerns? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for Chapter 102, short-term rentals.
I appreciate you guys taking on this task. I know it's been a hot topic, so thank you for getting something together on this. So I'd move approval to code change Chapter 102.
I have a motion to approve code change in Chapter 102. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Sally,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Bernard,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Song,
Yes.
Montgomery.
Yes.
Motion is approved. This will go to the Board of Directors on March the 7th. Last item on the agenda is board and staff approved permits, which you have a copy of. Is there any questions for those? With all those questions, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I moved.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.